Well, Germany's political landscape has become increasingly polarised in recent years. The government says there were nearly 9,000 attacks by far-right groups and individuals in the first half of last year, an increase of around 1,000 compared to the same period the year before. In 2018, 5 states reported at least three right-wing racist and anti-Jewish attacks per day. The government says it stepped up efforts to tackle the problem. Last week, 12 men were arrested for planning attacks against asylum seekers, Muslims and politicians. And earlier this month, the leader of the governing Christian Democrats said she's stepping down after a state premier briefly joined forces with the far-right Alternative für Deutschland party. It was the first time that's happened since the Second World War. Well, Jakob Schindler is a senior director at the Counter Extremism Project and a former German diplomat. He joins us now live from Berlin by Skype. Good to have you with us. We've just gone through some of the statistics there. Do you think Germany has a problem with far-right extremism?
Clearly we have. The security services have been very clear that there is a rise in right-wing violence. There's also a rise in the number of right-wing individuals that the internal intelligence service is monitoring and that the state intelligence services in Germany are monitoring. So we do actually have a rising right-wing problem, while the same category of individuals on the terrorist Islamist side, Al-Qaeda and Islamic State related, is actually stagnating now for 2 years.
So why do you think there is this problem then?
Look, this is a long, drawn-out story. There's always been a bedrock of right-wing extremism in Germany that has never really gone away since the Second World War. What we had is a change in the political landscape in the last 5 years with the rise of the Alternative for Germany party that brought some of the movement into the political arena. But we also had something that is quite overlooked, a conflict where the right-wing extremists of Europe actually engaged pretty much in the same way that we had with the Islamic State in Syria. That is the conflict in the Ukraine, where a staggering 2,500 Europeans of non-Russian origin fought on both sides of the conflict, primarily to gain military experience, and they are back now. So these individuals are an extreme risk factor and obviously infuse a new level of willingness to exert violence into right-wing networks in Europe that goes beyond Germany.
Perhaps, but there does seem to be a rather alarming amount of these far-right extremist incidents within Germany. And I guess, I mean, I don't need to tell you, Germany has had historical issues with extremism on the far right. I guess my question is, how does Germany begin to tackle this? Because it's not for a want of wanting for legislation. There's plenty of legislation there, but there doesn't seem to be much progress made when it comes to tackling it, given by the statistics we've just listed.
Absolutely. But I mean, look, there have been efforts been made already in the last 2 years. But in order for the security services to shift gear from an absolute emphasis on Islamist terrorism during the years where the Islamic State was rising in Iraq and Syria, and now to refocus on right-wing extremism to the same extent, will take some time. But the security services have gotten, at least on the federal level, ample amount of new positions focusing on this. Even the Foreign Intelligence Service now has an official that is dedicated to right-wing extremism. You do have efforts to increase the combat of hate speech on the internet in Germany via the Netzwerkdurchsetzungsgesetz, the famous NetzDG law that requires platforms to remove hate speech, including terrorism speech. Again, there the platforms are better on the Islamist side than they are on the right-wing extremist side. And then you have a little bit of a different structural issue with right-wing extremism. While with Islamist terrorism, you have massive networks like Islamic State or Al-Qaeda networks, or Hamas or Hezbollah for that matter. On the right-wing side, you do have an interpersonal connection all over Europe and within Germany, but no leading organization. So you have a whole host of groups, small cells, that sometimes are connected, sometimes are disconnected. So it's a different challenge for the security services. But the government has started to take some step. Now, the sad events of today obviously demonstrate the risks as compared to last week, where things were going well. There was a massive terror cell on the right-wing side that was arrested because it was a cell, people communicating, planning massive attacks for a while. And today we saw where the security services still have massive challenges, that is to identify individual terrorists who have massive mental problems and are fairly isolated, and then by themselves start to decide one day to the next that they want to commit an attack. And that's something that is, even with the best of the defense services for internal security, really hard to detect.
OK, Jakob Schindler, have to leave it there, but thank you so much there for joining us live from Berlin.
Thank you so much.